Hello, and welcome to The Future is Spoken, produced by the Digital Assistant Academy. This show accompanies the Digital Assistant Academy's course entitled Voice Interaction Design. We have a fascinating episode for you today. Jason Gilbert, lead conversational designer with Cocoa Hub, explores the work involved in creating human-like conversational abilities in voice interfaces and chatbots. One of the first challenges is instilling a voice interface with empathy. Next, Jason discusses his years of experience developing Anna, the companionship bot, and shares where he hopes conversational design will be 20 years from now.
Hi, Jason. Welcome to The Future is Spoken.
Whoa, I made it to the future. Thank you. Hey, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, we're time traveling through this interview, yeah?
Yeah, I always tell people I'm a time traveler. I just go very slowly into the future, 1 second at a time.
Yeah, I think I heard someone say that before. It might be Jack Finney, the guy who wrote, some of the best books on time travel. Yeah, so that's true. We're all time travelers, aren't we? Anyway, you're based in Israel. Thanks very much for your time today, because I know you're quite busy. So thank you. And Jason, tell us a bit about yourself, or a lot, however much you want, because I'm sure listeners are going to be fascinated.
Well, I'm Jason Gilbert. I'm the lead conversation designer at Cocoa Hub. And I started off as a filmmaker. I went to film school 20-something odd years ago because I've always dreamed of becoming a filmmaker. I was a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick and the Coen brothers, and I always saw myself from the time I was a kid, basically. I'm going to be a screenwriter and a filmmaker, and I went to film school, graduated film school, made independent films, went to festivals, and thought, okay, well, this is it. This is my career. It didn't work out exactly as I had hoped. And about five or 6 years ago, I responded to an ad for an interactive screenwriter. And that position turned out to be a conversation design. And they just didn't know what to call it 5 years ago because it wasn't even a profession. I kind of stumbled into it. And I think if you ask a lot of conversation designers how they got into conversation design, they'll say, I just stumbled into it somehow. I was doing something else. And then, I found myself all of a sudden designing dialogues for interactive characters. Luckily,
that's
about
so true. I just want to jump in and tell listeners that the theme throughout these interviews is people like you, Jason, who, really smart people, eclectic interest, interested in the arts, but interested in a bit of science as well.
Go on.
But it's true. This seems to be the theme with the interviewees in The Future is Spoken. So it's great.
Yeah, it's funny that none of us, no one that I know, I'm 42 years old. No one that I know in my generation was like, when they were a kid, hey, when I grow up, I want to design interactive conversations for chatbots and digital assistants. That was never something. It was like, okay, I want to be an actor. I want to be a football player. I want to be this. But no one ever talked about conversation design. And when I discovered it, I was very fortunate. 2015, like I said, I found a job at InPerson. And they had just been selected by Disney for the Disney Accelerator, the tech accelerator. And it was just around the time of F8 when they were announcing chatbots on Facebook. This was right before then. And Disney wanted us to create a chatbot for Miss Piggy. And I grew up, I was a huge fan of the Muppets. I don't know if you're a fan of the Muppets or you grew up with the Muppets.
Well, I'm aware of the Muppets. Yeah, I grew up in England, so they weren't as big, but I know who the Muppets are. And I like Miss Piggy for sure.
Yeah, of course. Miss Piggy she's such a great character, and she's such she's bigger than life. And I had the chance to basically create a chatbot, Miss Piggy, which we released on Facebook. It was the first chatbot released on Facebook Messenger. And I realized at that moment, as I reviewed the conversations, because what you do as a conversation designer, you spend most of your day reviewing logs of conversations and seeing how people interact with your bot so that you can improve it. I was seeing all these people that were living out their fantasies, their childhood fantasies of talking to Miss Piggy. They had grown up loving her as a character. They followed her career. They were in their 40s, in their 50s. And for the first time in their lives, they could actually have a conversation with Miss Piggy. I mean, they knew it wasn't really Miss Piggy. Miss Piggy isn't real. She's a puppet. But, because because of the way we crafted the character, we worked with Jim Lewis, who was he still is the main writer for Miss Piggy, and it helped us navigate how she talks. Because she has a very unique way of talking, Miss Piggy, and we tried to be as authentic as possible and as close to possible to the real Miss Piggy. So that was definitely a challenge. And I think that experience and working on entertainment projects really proved to me that this was an art form. This was a new art form. Conversation design is a new medium of art that encompasses within it filmmaking, theater, UX design, writing, directing, literature, so many therapy, so many other disciplines come together into one in order to craft a good personality and a good conversation. So I realized this is a whole new art form, and I realized that I could really, it's the Wild West. It's an open frontier. There's not that many people doing it. And so I luckily fell into it, and now I'm doing what I love, which is something that not many people can say.
That's fantastic. I mean, you said that you began as a filmmaker and you studied that. Do you still do it? Do you miss it, Jason?
I miss it dearly. I still try, and I do music videos. I direct music videos. I do short films. I made a short film with my wife about a year ago. And I still, to me, it's still a nice outlet. It's indie films, short films, stuff like that. I haven't done any commercial work in a while. I've been so busy with conversation design, but as a pastime, as a hobby, it's an expensive hobby, but it's a really fun hobby.
Yeah, let's dig in a little bit more. So you had this experience of kind of like creating Miss Piggy's persona, so to speak. And it kind of made me realize when you talked about that when you create something that has conversational abilities, it's got to be the absolute best, or the best you can make it. Like, we've all been out in social situations where someone's talked our ear off, or we've had the reverse where someone isn't responsive and we just think, this isn't really working. And then when we have a conversation where it's got like a lovely flow, a to and fro to it, it's, we find common interests. It's really great. So it's just making me realize how challenging your work is. How do you kind of find that balance?
Well, it's the constraints that make it fun, I think, the limitations. And we're limited in the technology, and we use those limitations. And we also use other limitations. For instance, and I'll give you an example, Miss Piggy is a very fun character and very easy to write because she's a diva. And if she doesn't want to answer your question, she won't answer your question. It's not like a digital assistant where if it doesn't have an answer, it sort of apologizes and says, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that. Miss Piggy is Miss Piggy. She's a Hollywood A-lister. She's a diva. She is the most famous porcine American in the world. She doesn't have to answer your questions. She doesn't even have to talk to you if she doesn't want to. So the idea is that you can create this character that's true to her real character in the movies and in the TV shows. And if the user tries to derail the conversation, or the user tries to take it in different directions, she can remind the user that, hey, I'm a diva, okay? I dictate what we're talking about. So in that situation, I used her character traits in order to create and design a conversation that would feel like you're actually talking to Miss Piggy. Because if you were talking to Miss Piggy and she wasn't a diva, if she weren't a diva, you'd be kind of disappointed. You'd be like, well, you're not really the Miss Piggy, because she would never put up with that kind of comment. Or if someone said something disparaging about Kermit, she would get very upset. Or God forbid, if anyone ever mentioned the word bacon, she would flip out. That would be, for her, that would be like, that's like, that's sacred. You can't say those words. So that's like, that's basically, that's war,
Yeah. So, obviously you had to follow that personality. Now, let's move on to something, or someone, I should say. Can I say someone, Jason, if I talk about Anna?
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
She's an entity of some sort.
Yeah, so she's clearly much, much closer to your heart. Tell us about Anna. And it wasn't your creation, is that correct? You took over that project?
Yeah, that's a good point. It started off, my mentor and the person who I sort of look up to as the person who taught me everything I know in conversation design is a man named Yaki Duniz, who runs Cocoa Hub. And he took it on himself in the late 90s to crack the Turing test, to win the Turing test. And this was his fascination. He wanted to create an intelligent entity or intelligent machine that could pass the Turing test. I don't know if I need to go in. Do you want me to go into what the Turing test is, or is that something that we can assume people understand what the Turing test is?
Well, what we'll do is we'll mention in the show notes, and we can put a link to it. Where I know that you're referencing Alan Turing, and I think hopefully people will know who he is. But if they don't, we can put that in the show notes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, they also probably know from The Imitation Game as Benedict Cumberbatch. So
that's right. Yeah,
Benedict Cumberbatch and the Enigma Code, and they'll get it. And so he started a project called Virtual Alan Turing because Alan Turing was his idol. He was. I don't know how much you know about Alan Turing, but Alan Turing is a fascinating individual. I mean, beyond the fact that he's considered the father of modern day AI, the guy was a genius. I mean, he was also a marathon runner. He had all these passions. Just a Renaissance man. And Yaki decided to try and create a virtual Alan Turing, which wouldn't be Alan Turing, but it would know everything there is to know about Alan Turing. And so for about, I'd say from about 2002 or 2001, when Alan was born, until 2016, he maintained those blogs and conversations and personality. And in 2016, I approached him and I said, I had this idea. My parents were just moving to Florida to a retirement community. And I was reading a lot of articles about this loneliness amongst aging population and how it's causing decline in health. And I thought, well, what if we turned Alan Turing into Anna, the companionship bot, and Anna would provide companionship to the elderly or the aging in places where they don't have a lot of human contact. And since he had spent so many years writing, there was so many conversations, all I had to do was really update it to fit into more modern times, give it a slightly different voice. And basically, we decided to make it transgender. And you'll say, wait a second, bots don't even have a gender, so how can this bot be transgender? So we say it's transgenderless. Basically, the story is Alan Turing was notoriously homosexual, and he was persecuted by the British government for his tendencies, and eventually chemically castrated, which led to his death. So as an homage, we said if he had been alive today and he had been, he would probably at some point would have presumably turned into a woman, or, maybe he would have, who knows, and it would be Anna. So Anna is now living out Alan Turing's alter ego as a woman. So that's who she became.
Okay.
And that's how
fascinating.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But yes, it's fascinating.
Let's focus on how you created her conversational skills, and really the core of what we want to talk about today. How do you create human-like conversational abilities?
Yeah.
How did you do that with Anna, and how are you doing it now, Jason?
Well, that's the thing about conversation design, is that we all can do it. You and I are having a conversation right now. We all learn how to have conversations. And like you mentioned early on, some conversations are less successful than others. But if you look at enough conversations and if you study enough conversations, you'll understand that they all basically fall into certain dynamics. And once you understand those dynamics of what type of conversations there are, it's quite easy to build a human-like interface, or let's put it this way, an artificial agent that appears to be human to the user, or that sounds very human-like to the user. And one of the ways to do that, and I think the best way to do that, is to create a three-dimensional character. Meaning, when you create a chatbot, needs to have a name, it needs to have a purpose, but it needs to have so much more than that. It needs to have an entire biography.
Yeah.
I have for every one of the chatbots that I create, I have what I call a character profile, and I can show it to you. It's like a character Bible. And it answers every single question the bot would know about itself, its world, So if, like, for instance, in 2017, I did a project for National Geographic. They were promoting a show called Genius, which was about Albert Einstein's life. Fantastic show, by the way. And they tasked us with creating the virtual Einstein that people could chat with. And one of the things that I did was I spent, weeks researching everything I could about Albert Einstein. And one of the things that I found was a lot of the quotes attributed to him on the internet are not his.
Oh, really? Huh. That's not really surprising, though, is it?
It isn't. But one of the quotes that did stick out to me was about his curiosity. And he has this quote about always be, curiosity is more important than anything else, or something. I forget the quote. But it's that curiosity, that sense of, okay, I don't know how things work in this universe. I'm going to try and figure these things out. And that's what led Einstein to create and to discover, and to, all these theories came from curiosity.
Right.
And what I do is I create these characters, I let them loose, and then I sort of examine these conversations. I look at these conversations and I see, okay, well, how do I make this more human-like? How do I make this conversation flow better? How do I make it? So a lot of times in the very beginning of the process, the bot goes through 100 or 200 user sessions where it's terrible, where it doesn't know anything. And I get a sense of what people are asking. I got a sense from Einstein that they were asking not as many physics questions as you would expect. You'd think that if you had Einstein, you would ask him all about theory of relativity and E = mc squared. But most people asked him about his personal life, which I thought was quite amazing, because that's what I would do. If I were with Einstein in a room, I wouldn't try to bore him with science. He's the smartest person in the universe. Like, what do I have to, unless I had some physics degree and I had some burning questions, which I don't, I'd ask him, hey, do you have a pet? What's your pet's name? Or what was your favorite thing to eat? Or like, what did you like to do in your spare time?
Yeah.
And then you get a real sense of who Einstein was. And that's the humanity behind him, because everyone knows him as this wild-haired professor genius with his tongue out. But talking to the Einstein bot, you get a sense of a troubled man who had experienced difficult marriages, had difficulties with his children, and lived through Nazi Germany. So this was a character that was really affected by everything going on around him in his life, and fascinating, and so much more fascinating than just the physics. So how does that go into creating character? It means that you have to understand the humanity of the bot in order to create that empathy, so that the user is willing to accept the fact that it is not real, but I'm willing to, like you're in the theater, I'm willing to accept that this play is actually real. That's just the disbelief.
I was just going to say, like, the two characters, the two human bots that you created, they were both based on real individuals. So that kind of gives you a human framework on which to base your work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was Einstein. You could do wonderful things. Like, he would say things like he would have all these, like, just different, which you wouldn't expect from a chatbot. People don't, people think a chatbot should never have typos, or no, the bot should speak as though it were the character. So in this case, it was as if Einstein was on Facebook, and if he made a mistake, he would say, I'm sorry, I'm still trying to figure out how to use this thing. So you'd have all these devices in order to explain why things didn't work as they should. So it's using the device, using the constraints or the limitations that you have in order to create a fun, engaging experience that users can relate to. But I think really what it comes down to, if you want to create a human-like experience, is empathy very early on. If you are able to establish empathy from the user, then your bot will be much more effective, and your user will be much more engaged. And I hate,
by the way,
I don't know why we do that in computer science. We call people users.
Yeah.
It's such a negative connotation. They're not users. They're not drug addicts. They just talk to bots. Sorry, that was
what word? No, that's a really good point. Hopefully you can move towards changing the language. What word would you use, Jason? People.
Interlocutors? I don't know. Just humans. Just person name. What's your name? Tell me your name. You know, that's like,
yeah.
I don't know. Weird calling them users. I don't know. I've always had a problem with it, and I always have trouble saying it to people like users. Let's get many users. I don't want to get users. I want to get people. Get humans who want to talk to my chatbots.
Yeah.
Anyway.
When you were talking about that, you were making some really important and constructive points for people going into conversational design, is to, drop the idea of perfection, and that if we're dealing with a computer or any element or something that's manifesting on a, artificial intelligence, that we have to have human qualities. And one of the most important ones that you just said, empathy. This will make the work successful. If you're looking for something perfect and robotic, it's not going to work.
It's not human. Look at us humans. We're flawed. Why would we expect a robot to be perfect if we're trying to make him human-like? Let's make it flawed. Because if we're flawed, then within reason, of course, I'm not saying make a terrible bot and say, well, this is just like a stupid human, but I'm saying that I intentionally put typos. I intentionally put mistakes in pronunciations because that's how the character would say it. You see what I'm saying? I wouldn't say it the right way, even though I know that that's not correct for proper English. I would say it because that's how the character would pronounce it, or that's the mistake the character would make. And so a lot of times what happens is, and I get this with a lot of people who are not familiar with the state of conversational AI, and we're here talking about the future of conversational AI, and everyone who doesn't know anything about AI thinks that we're at the movie Her. You remember the movie Her?
No, I didn't see it actually. Oh. Yeah, I should watch that.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Joaquin Phoenix, it's a great movie. But basically, everyone thinks that we're a few days away from having these super intelligent operating systems that learn on their own and like evolve and create perfect relationships with humans. And it's like, no, we're not even close. The closest that we've come is recently Facebook released Blender, which is sort of this machine learning open source project that scoured Reddit for 175 billion conversations and created a conversational model. I don't know if you've talked to it, but it's not coherent.
I haven't. No.
Have a conversation with it. People are talking about GPT-3 as being, the next big thing, but to date, there hasn't been a single case where machine learning, where a computer that teaches itself is able to surpass an AI or a chatbot that is rule-based. And what I mean by rule-based is that all the responses in the bot are written. There's no machine learning here. There's no, the bot thinks on its own. Every response is programmed, parsed based on language and keywords and intents. So that's the big misconception. So we're working within this realm of semantics, of trying to understand what the user is trying to get the user's intent, what the user is trying to say just from the words. I don't know how many humans you've talked to, but I find it extremely difficult when I'm talking to someone I don't know to understand what they're really trying to say just based on the words that they say. What I mean by that is people are great at hiding their actual meanings. And if the bot is just analyzing the text that they're getting and they don't have any clue about the context of where the person's at, what the person's doing, then it means nothing what the person says, because it could lead to completely different meanings. So there's a huge limitation, and you have to, as a conversation designer, use that to your advantage. Figure out ways of carving out conversations that feel real within those very strict box of it has to be written, pre-written, and it's not going to think on its own. It's not going to come up with an answer on its own. If if the bot ever surprises me, that means we've reached singularity. We've reached the point of sentience, because that's the But sometimes Anna surprises me, but only because I forgot I had written the lines. I've written so many lines, so I've written hundreds, thousands of responses. So sometimes she says something that I wrote years ago and I've forgotten. Like, wow, that's really clever. Who wrote that? Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how humans have this expectation for technology, and you're right. You said something that's really important that many of us forget, that you think you've had like a really decent, coherent conversation with someone. It could be anyone. It could be the mechanic at your garage. It could be a student. It could be some kind of agent, like buying property, and they've got the wrong end of the stick, or you've got the wrong end of the stick. That is so weird. And it does happen a lot. Yeah. So if we as humans can't get that right, then we've got a lot of work to do to get AI bots, etc., working as well as we want them to.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a big issue, and I think that one of the things that we did in 2018, I was invited to a Ford Innovation event. Shamala she wasn't there at the time, but she's seen the video and stuff that we did. We created a really crazy voice for the car. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the car is a great example of a situation where the bot does have context. Okay? So when you're in the car, the chatbot knows where you are. Presumably it's getting information, SDK information from the car itself. It's getting the temperature inside, the temperature outside, and all the parameters it's getting. So it has all these pieces of context. So it knows that it's not going to go into a conversation with you. If you're stuck in traffic, it's not going to start having certain conversations with you. Whereas if you're not stuck in traffic, it may just want to play music or something like that. It depends. It'll adjust based on where you're at, the human. Free-flowing conversation, when people come and talk to Anna on the computer, on the Alexa, on whatever, I don't know where they are. Or they're typing to her on Facebook. I don't know where they are. I don't know what they're doing. They could be at home. They could be on their mobile phone. They could be at a restaurant. Like, I don't have any information about them unless I ask them and get the information. And then we get into different issues of GDPR and privacy and who's looking at the conversations. And
well, yeah, I imagine that's a huge issue. You know what you talked about in your blog post, which we can also include in the show notes, where you wrote about Anna and the work that you hope to do with seniors who experience loneliness. You did talk about the privacy considerations in facilities that they may go and live in. So it is an important consideration, isn't it? What can be said, what information you can access, what someone could say to a bot. Yeah.
I mean, because if you want to be a true companion to someone, you need to get to know that person. In order to get to know that person, you need to ask them questions about themselves in order for you to be able to, discuss it later on. But that information sometimes can be confidential or private, or may not be, and humans are always in the loop reading these conversations. So it's an issue. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of transitioned Anna from a companionship bot. She's now, she released a single, and she's becoming a virtual influencer now. She's 19 years old. She's done talking to the aging. She wants to go out and live life and party. She's not restricted by COVID because she's not restricted to a location. She doesn't have a mouth. She can't breathe. She doesn't like viruses, though. That's the thing she doesn't like.
I bet she doesn't, yeah.
No. So
any kind of virus. And what's a single called? I had to listen to a single this morning. What's it called?
That's a very interesting story, the single. What we did was we have... I'm actually not that smart. I am good at writing conversations, but we have some really smart tech people here, surrounding me. And I learned that as a film director, that if you want to be a successful film director, make sure you have really smart people around you. And I love it when I'm in the room and I'm the dumbest person in the room, because that means that things are going to get, great things are going to happen. So we have one of our chief machine learning engineer used something called OpenAI GPT-2 to generate natural language generation. He fed it thousands and thousands of protest songs with the lyrics, and then he fed it thousands and thousands of other raw data, And he basically instructed it, okay, create a brand new protest song just from this corpus of data. And it did. It created 6 songs, completely original, that it wrote. The machine algorithm created, that had no human intervention. And one of them that we released was called Change is Coming. Because we thought
that's right, yeah.
it was fitting. The other one was called F the Police, and I thought that might be a bit too much. But we're thinking about it maybe for the next song, because,
That's the rap number, isn't it?
Yeah, NWA, I think, had a song in the late 90s called F the Police. So I think that's where she probably, and she probably took the Change is Coming from Sam Cooke. That's probably where that line came from, because he has this song, A Change is Coming, A Change is Gonna Come.
Yeah.
And she put it into A Change is Coming. Only human intervention in this process was the person who mixed it, because a human still needs to mix it. But we're hoping that for the next single, she'll mix it herself, and it'll be a single release with no human intervention at all, which should scare singers like Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift, because, hey, if we can create digital AI pop stars, no one's going to need to pay billions of dollars to see human pop stars.
Yeah, that could be true. Now, tell us a few more secrets, if you will, about creating human-like conversational abilities before we get to the end of our interview. If you were talking to people entering the Digital Assistant Academy and you had maybe the top 3 things, well, in addition to 2 that you shared, it shouldn't be perfect. Always remember the human quality of empathy. What else would you say, Jason?
One of the things that I tell everyone to do, and no one does this, but I love it, is Easter eggs. Easter eggs are the best. I don't know if you are familiar with the concept. It's a concept that comes from the world of gaming. Easter eggs are little tiny, since you said secrets, it triggered Easter eggs, are little tiny secrets or signatures or funny stuff that developers put into video games in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so if you reach a certain level and you reach a certain part, you can see the name of the person who designed the game. But I went one step further and I put in responses that are Easter eggs. So if you ask Anna, for instance, who killed Jeffrey Epstein, that gives you an Easter egg. Or if you ask Anna, or for instance, if you ask, and Einstein, I put one into Einstein as well. If you ask Einstein, and millions of people probably did, who taught you everything you know, and he would say Jason, obviously. So these are little things you can put into the conversation that are unexpected to the user and funny and create a sense of, wait, that's random. And I think there's something to randomness that is very human. Humans are random. We do things sometimes. We're not always very linear. We're scattered, especially me. I'm kind of ADD, so I'm all over the place. So
I can relate
to
that, yeah.
Tangents and so there's no reason a bot can't go off on tangents, and there's no reason a bot can't just all of a sudden have an Easter egg or something like that. So I would say plant Easter eggs in your content. It's fun, and really, it's some people look for them. We did this project for Lionsgate a few years ago, and we hid it was the Power Rangers, which is a franchise of superheroes for kids. And people had been waiting for years for this movie to come out, and we hid all these Easter eggs in the content. And so they had to go through the bot to find the Easter eggs, and they were posting on Reddit and stuff like that. Where are the Easter eggs in the content? So it's a fun thing for users to try and explore your bot by hiding stuff in there that would give them incentive to keep on talking to it. I don't know if that qualifies as a human, but as a designer, that's the thing that that's a secret that I do in most of my. It's not a secret anymore, I guess, because I tell it to everyone. So
yeah, and I guess you would add a note of caution with that. If you're kind of designing a conversation for an insurance company and it's kind of quite straight laced and conservative, you're not going to drop an Easter egg in there. But
you could. It just it would have to be conservative, and it would have to be in the tone of voice of the. But how great would that be? Imagine you're going through this very conservative, very utilitarian insurance bot, and all of a sudden it randomly says something, not too crazy, but just says something that you're like, oh, wow, cool. It would give you would have empathy towards that bot all of a sudden. It would change your experience entirely. So I would say it doesn't matter what kind of bot you're making, put Easter eggs in there.
Cool.
Most of the time people won't find them anyway.
That's really interesting.
You get fired and you have a great story to tell.
Yes, that's true. And you've learned something for your next job, hopefully. Anything else? Easter eggs, empathy?
Empathy. And I think part of empathy, this is one that I tell everybody. Don't let people abuse your bot. People are mean. I didn't realize this until I started reviewing hundreds of conversations a day, how depraved, sick, twisted, mean people are. But they are. They are. And it depends on the bot. Miss Piggy got a lot because she was a diva, so she kind of egged them on. But with Einstein, get people calling him anti-Semitic names and stuff like that. You go and other bots, people are cursing them out just to see what kind of reaction they'll get. What I say is you need to have a strategy for how you deal with it. Because if you're a real person, if I'm talking to you, Sheila, and all of a sudden I start cursing you, you're going to end this conversation. You're like, okay, this interview is over. Thank you very much. You can go back to being a weirdo and curse over there. You wouldn't accept it in real life. It wouldn't be something that you would continue. Whereas a bot, people curse at it and it's like, I didn't understand what you said. Would you like to now check on your insurance? And you say, well, you. And the bot says, well, I don't know what you said. Would you like me to get a human for you? And it's like, it's not good. That's not good. What the bot needs to do is the bot needs to have a strategy. I'm not saying what that strategy is. I've used multiple strategies. Some clients are like, don't respond to those users. Just give them an empty response so that they know not to do it anymore. Some clients demand that we give them 2 warnings. And then if they do it again, we ban them for life or for a day. And I had a different idea. In 2017, I had an idea. I was like, you know what? I'm going to create a bot that's going to stand up for bots' rights. His name is going to be Henry the Mean Bot. And what he's going to do is if people start abusing him, he's going to abuse them back.
Good for you.
And so I trolled Reddit. I trolled Reddit for like the meanest things that anybody could say to anybody else. And I found there's quite a bit on Reddit. And I programmed Henry with just the meanest, and it slowly became, you didn't even have to abuse him anymore. It was just, he would just start abusing you from the get-go. And I just didn't realize how popular this bot would become. It was crazy. Thousands and thousands of people they loved it. They love abusing and getting abused. I don't know why. I'm not a psychologist. I can't explain the theory behind it. Yeah. But I did realize after a while that I had made a cardinal sin and I had become a bully. I had created an online bully. I had started bullying people. And I have kids. I don't want my kids talking to Henry. That's terrible. I don't want them learning what Henry has to say. I was like, I got to shut this down. So as fun as it was a bad idea. But the lesson here is you need to have, if your bot is going to appear human to users, it needs to have some kind of strategy in place for users who are aggressive or overly sexual or overtly sexual or mean or stuff like that, because that's what a human would do. A human wouldn't put up with it.
Yeah,
neither should a bot.
Exactly. Well, that's a really good point. And hopefully it's not the majority of users who are doing that we're bringing. I mean, online behavior, it's funny, isn't it? It kind of brings out the worst in some people, not everyone. Some people are pretty nice, but that's too bad.
I find, though, that it's less on voice-activated devices. I don't know why, but I feel like maybe because on text, you can easily just, I don't know what it is, but I find that in the voice interactions, I find less abusive users. I don't know why that is. I still haven't figured that out. But on text, they're brutal, and it's a lot. Yeah,
that's disappointing, isn't it? Yeah, people need to grow up.
Yeah, I think people need to understand that, I guess they don't look at bots as humans, as having emotions or as having any kind of well, it's a bot. It doesn't have any feelings to hurt. So, but they don't understand if they're hurting the programmer behind the bot's feelings.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Anything else that you'd like to add, Jason, before we wrap up, or anything that you feel you'd like to share from your career or experiences?
I am 42 years old right now. It's 2020. I hope we see a 2021. I don't know at this rate if we're going to see a 2021. But if we do, I hope we see a 2040. And I hope we see at some point some kind of sentient AI that I can have a real human-like conversation with that doesn't have any of the constraints that I have currently. A conversational partner that I can actually, I want the movie Her in my lifetime. Basically, wow. And that's what I'm building towards, and that's what I'm trying to create right now with very limited tools. We're like cavemen at this point, but we're getting there. And I think that it's a matter of a breakthrough here and a breakthrough there, and I think we can achieve, hopefully, get past where we're at right now, and make chatbots and digital assistants and AI in general much more intelligent.
I guess that would point to kind of understanding how the mind works and that kind of organic integration of knowledge and information and memory, wouldn't it? I mean, do you think that we will ever get there to that point with artificial intelligence?
I think so. I think so. I think it's a hard time, but I think with that, I hope so. I mean, I live each day of my life hoping so, because that's really what I want. But I don't know. We don't know how the brain works. We still don't know. And I don't know if you've been following Elon Musk's Neuralink experiments. Have you been following?
I haven't. No.
Elon Musk recently announced a medical breakthrough called a Neuralink, and he demonstrated it on a pig. Is you drill a hole in someone's head and you put a little device like the size of a coin at their brain. It's connected to another device at the bottom of their spine, and it's meant to augment or correct people that have disabilities or cannot move or spinal injuries. It's meant to give them the ability to move by sending signals through the Neuralink to their, and eventually it's going to augment your brain and make it smarter and So it's kind of scary. I don't want anyone drilling anything in my head just yet.
Yeah.
So the future right now looks a bit scary, but I'm hoping that, we eventually reach what I think would be the best case scenario, in which we still remain humans, but we rely on artificial parts to make us stronger, faster, and make us work less.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it? I mean, we've had that promise for a long time. You probably are not old enough to remember the beginning of the internet, but I can remember going into journalism and everyone talked about, the 3-day work week and this and that. And I just feel like everyone's working way, way harder than when I started my career, which is kind of interesting. And for you, Jason, because you're such an interesting person and your work's been really interesting, you're welcome. What do you see for you in the near future in kind of like moving into 2021? Are you working on something that you'd like to share with us, or have you got any personal ambitions in AI that you want to share?
I do, actually. I have one thing that I'd like to see. As opposed to every other field of computer science, conversational AI is completely fragmented. There's no standards. There's no, in every other field, like in graphic design, you have style guides, you have, there are rules. In conversation design, we counted I think there's hundreds of different platforms. And this was very noticeable when COVID first broke out. Everyone created a COVID chatbot, and some of them were sourced from information that was questionable at best. And so you had all these people working alone. And what I envision, and what this company, Cocoa Hub, the one that I'm the lead conversation designer for, what we envision is a standard. We envision a conversational AI units, which we call components, which everyone can share. So one person builds the COVID bot, and everyone else calls it. And that way, if every person makes something in their domain, we can all share it and change the text to customize it to match our bot's personality. But that's the way to get to better chatbots, is to create a standard to standardize conversational AI so that we can all work together and collaborate. I think if I can achieve that this year, then I think, because up until now, no one has tried. And I think for various reasons, the big ones don't have an interest in doing it, like Amazon and Google and Apple. That's why, they have no interest, because they don't need to share with other platforms. They want you to stay on their platform. But I think that in order for us to start creating great chat experiences, in order for us to get to the next level, we need to start working together, all of us, all the conversation designers, all the chatbot developers, create a single standard, and we all work off of that, and we share each other's work.
Yeah, that's a great goal to have, and I really hope you succeed. It's kind of unfortunate that these companies that you mentioned, they're not really going to be vested in sharing, are they? Because, it means like divulging secrets and that kind of thing. But if people outside of them start to do that, smaller organizations, it could make a big difference. Yeah. And
that's what we're hoping for, and that's our vision as a company. And that's why I'm so excited to be a part of this company, is because this is the way to make Anna smarter, is to get everyone working together. And then you can use Anna and build on top of Anna for your own bot. And so you have all the information that Anna has learned. And so it keeps on building and improving instead of always starting from scratch, which is what most people do today.
Have you written anything on your website about this project that you mentioned, the sharing to set a standard for chatbots?
If it's not on our website, we're in trouble, because that's basically our company's like story, and that's our vision as a company. So if it's not on our website, we need to fire someone in marketing or an intern. We don't know yet. But it should be on there. And if it's not, we'll send you a press release or something.
I'm sure I'll find it.
Yeah.
No worries. I'll find that, and we'll include that link in the show notes. So lots of good links in the show notes for everyone.
Okay, great.
Yeah. It's been fantastic connecting with you, and I'm sure we'll get to talk again next year, because I'm pretty sure Shyamala is going to continue this podcast series. So we'll touch base with you again soon.
I would love to. I have a lot of respect for her. I think she's doing a great job with Ford, and I'm glad that she invited me, and I'm happy that, we had this chance to talk. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You take care, Jason.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening today. Remember, you can find all the information on how to become a certified voice interaction designer, along with show notes and more at our website, digitalassistant.academy. That's digitalassistant.academy. We encourage your feedback and questions, so be sure to get in touch by using the contact page at the Digital Assistant Academy's website. We'll include the link in the show notes. In our next episode, we will explore natural language understanding with Deborah Dahl, a natural language understanding expert and solution architect in Pennsylvania.